So we'll get started. I'll start with introducing myself. I'm Randy Boyd. I'm the former minister at Trinity United Church in Thunder Bay. I was there for 30 years, but now I'm the national facilitator of the Rural Connect program, where we use technology to create clusters of congregations to have a live interactive service together. So I'm pleased to be here, and I think that one of the issues that's being raised in this particular workshop is a really important one, because we've had some pretty impressive and dramatic changes in how we worship over the past year and a half, but a lot of it's been predicated on having good internet. And so it does sort of raise the question: if you don't have good internet, what can you do? Or if it's poor internet, what can you do? I've asked Ryan to join me today because Ryan uses a particular alternative that's, I think, something of interest in this kind of situation. And so we'll be getting to that later. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, everybody.
But I really thought we have a small group. I thought I would sort of ask people to start and discuss the situation that they're in right now. You know, what brought you to this particular workshop? And maybe we can start with you, Ruth.
Okay, I'm from Balzac United, so I'm similar to Irene, except on the north end of Calgary, between Calgary and Airdrie. So we're just outside, but we are a rural connection for our internet. So we basically shut our church down in March of 2020, and for the most part, haven't used it since. We've done Zoom worship services. The minister does it from her home. And we all tune in, and we've had reasonable, I mean, we're a small congregation. We averaged 35, 40-ish maybe on Sundays.
Yeah.
And we're down to 20, 25 participants with maybe 30-ish actual people when there's couples there attending through Zoom. But we're just not sure with our rural connection whether it's going to work, like if we could do any kind of a Zoom link. Mm-hmm. We're not big enough to afford fancy equipment. The thought right now is to run a regular service. We're looking at starting in October, maybe. We're still having our reopening committee working, and maybe do our regular in-person service, and then the minister's hoping to be able to do Zoom maybe from the church office after, like half an hour after the end of the service kind of thing, to be able to regroup and start again. But okay, so far, our best guess as to how to manage. But there's people that the community on Zoom has been very, very good, consistent, participatory, and enjoying community in a different way, where there was coffee tables after church and sort of little groups of people visiting and whatnot, but they were consistently the same people. So this has allowed a broader community. People didn't want to break down into small groups, so we've stayed with everybody doing coffee time together, and just it's made a much better connection as a whole. So in some ways, we don't want to go back to our little coffee groups, although for a while we won't be doing coffee or goodies or anything. We'll just church out the door kind of thing. Yeah. So other ideas would be very helpful to sort of help as we move into this another new.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think we're going to find, I mean, we're all sort of talking about reopening and when we're going to do that. And it really would be nice if we could just say, okay, October 15th, you know, we're going to open and it's going to go back to the way it was. And everyone will come and we'll have a big celebration. But even when we reopen, not everyone's going to be comfortable coming.
No.
It's going to take a while for people to come back. And there are also going to be people who found the alternative way of connecting a preferable way to connect, right? And so, you know, we're facing this this situation of how do we tend to both and manage both. I guess one of the questions I'd have is you sort of mentioned that the church does have some internet.
We have internet connection, but it's a rural connection. So
right.
It's not strong, consistent, whether it can support it. I mean, we have done a few things in the church. We interviewed a minister at one point when we were doing a sabbatical, an interim person to help out from the church, so it worked. But it's not like you could rely on it to be consistently there every Sunday. I know some of the people in the congregation have trouble because they're on the same kind of rural network, and they don't always have a good connection to come in. So
yeah. So one of the things that would be useful is when you're at the church and you got a computer on connected to that network, just do a speed test. If you go to something like www.speedtest.shaw.ca or .com, you'll be able to do a little test, and it'll measure actually how robust the connection is. And you may find you have sufficient connection for a Zoom meeting. It may not be sufficient to completely stream, but you might find you have a decent enough connection.
okay.
And one of the things we're really recommending is that if you do both, that you have some connection between them.
Okay.
And so, for example, the one church is planning on having the Zoom gallery view put up on the screen as people gather, right? And then people can say, okay, here's the people who are at home, but they're still with us. And then doing things like maybe having a scripture reader be one of the people on the Zoom meeting. And so you're actually having them as participants in the service as well. And, you might want to see if you have enough connectivity for that. If you have enough connectivity for coffee afterwards, then you might, and it's worth trying. And the speed test would be the first thing to do.
Okay. So what do we need? Like, I mean, right now we're just using the laptop, the church's laptop from the minister.
Right.
So we don't have a camera. I mean, we have a sound system in the church, but I don't know, but how do we work all of that into what? The church's laptop, that we then use that, and then how? Well, then we'd have to project it up on the screen. I'm not, I mean, I'm somewhat technical, but not that. And we do have more technical people than me in the congregation, but not a lot.
Yeah. And there's a whole raft of different ways of doing it. And so I'm going to suggest the simplest way.
Okay.
There are people, I guess the second question is, and this sort of heads into some of the alternatives, but what's your cellular connection? Can you take a cellular phone and have a phone call in your church?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If you got a good cellular connection, you could use an iPhone.
Okay.
And you can set up an iPhone. You can actually set up two iPhones and switch between them. And so there is software on iOS. Sorry?
An Android? Have we got Androids rather than iPhones?
I suspect there is. I don't know what they are. I know that there are iOS stuff, and the one that I was going to suggest was Cinemaker, and I've put a link in the chat to the website. And so that's something that on your iPad, you can switch between different cameras, and then it'll also stream out. So that would be the simplest kind of thing you could do. Some people do a GoPro, and they get the GoPro into that computer. And then the computer, you run OBS, which is a free switching software. And you take the camera in, and you can add whatever graphics you want, and it'll allow you to stream out as well. So you could look at OBS on the computer, and then a way of getting a camera in. Now, usually any kind of camera works, but you'll need an adapter to turn the signal from the camera signal to a digital signal for the computer. And there are a couple little, not terribly expensive, $100 kind of dongles that you can use to do that.
Sorry, you froze up there.
Sorry?
I say you froze up there for a minute. So
oh, sorry. I didn't freeze on my end. So what did you miss?
You started on the camera, and then you froze. So I wasn't quite sure.
Okay, sorry about that. Did I freeze for everyone?
No,
Okay.
it's your internet.
Yeah,
My
because
internet?
sometimes I do freeze, but usually I see that I'm frozen. So
This is a dongle.
that's an adapter. Yeah. It's HDMI
Yeah, but it's
on the
not.
one end.
It's not the one that you need, but it's similar.
Yeah.
You can get one, but that's what a dongle is.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, Elgato, ELGATO, has a nice little $99 unit that you just stick the HDMI or whatever the camera output is, and then you put the other end into your computer, and OBS will recognize it as a camera, and you can do what you need to do.
What was that, Delgado?
Elgato, ELGATO.
So that's a dongle?
Yeah, it's a dongle. I should have looked it up before. If we have time, I'll take a quick look and get a link.
I didn't get a link either in the chat for something else that you mentioned, the Cinemaker. You said you
Yes,
put the link,
it's in the chat.
the chat. I don't see it in the chat.
I don't either. Nothing in our chat yet.
Exactly.
Can you see some useful links for today?
No, there's nothing.
Isn't that odd? I'm sort of looking at my chat and it says me to everyone. And I've got 3 different things in there. So maybe you
None
had
of
to be
us-
on to see it. I don't know. That doesn't make sense. Let me try something.
Technology teaches us to constantly try new things.
Yeah. Now, do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. I
Yes.
guess I put this on beforehand and I guess you had to be on to receive it.
Had to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
One
What's
thing,
your situation, Irene?
well, just before I say about our situation, yesterday we were on the tech thing
What's next?
in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And one of the people there, and I can't remember which one of the two who were sort of facilitating that, one was saying about using Android phones,
Mhm.
like they were showing Android phones. And I think you could talk to them to find out about some of that too, because
Ellen
Yeah,
Buckingham.
Andrea might be
there was
part of the
there was
Android
James Clint, there's James Clendenin and Alan Buckingham,
He's in there.
Oh,
and
okay.
Alan Buckingham is in Banff. group.
Right.
Yes, I
Okay.
know Alan Buckingham. He was in our presbytery before we did the region thing. So I
Yeah,
know him.
Brian, do you use iPhone or Android?
I use Mac for everything except my phone. It's an Android because I have a BlackBerry. 'Cause I
Ah.
love a physical keyboard. Just my fingers, just
Yeah.
the way I type.
Yeah, my fingers are too fat.
I'm waiting for the next one to come out in the fall.
Oh, okay.
The
They're
next
still making them, are
BlackBerry.
they?
Yeah, Convac making them, but still, it'll have a keyboard.
So Irene, what's your situation?
well, we're right on the outskirts of Calgary, technically in Calgary, but on a rural connection. There is a new subdivision going in across the highway from us that may make it so that we have better internet. We do an awful lot on internet, and we bought all the equipment to stream. Not all the equipment. We bought some basic equipment to stream, but haven't really been very successful at doing that because of the instability and the sharing
Mhm.
of,
Yeah.
of the internet around us, which means that if any of the other, like there's a school and stuff like that, and if any of them are running anything, then suddenly our streaming is grounded, and it's unpredictable.
Mhm. Yeah.
So we have been recording services and premiering them on YouTube at a given time. every
Okay.
Sunday morning. And then we run a Zoom beforehand, sort of a meet and greet kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then afterwards, we have a Zoom, which is more structured with breakout groups and facilitators in those groups so that we can discuss the sermon and
Yeah.
the service and process that and pray and all that stuff. But as we're going, I think, contemplating going back, goodness knows how that's going to go, because we're in the Wild West here, where who knows? Like,
Yeah.
our numbers
Yeah.
are just, and we just seem to be throwing caution to the wind, and
Yeah.
and you know, anyway, our congregation, we've got one minister where we don't have a lot of people to do a lot of this stuff. I am not the technical person overall. I was in broadcasting for a while, so I'm kind of here because the others are on holiday, and I want to be able to communicate some stuff back to them and at least put them in touch with the right people to find out stuff. But we're wanting to stream if we can, and so I wanted to attend this to try and glean. This is my husband, Ralph,
Hello.
by the way. And I wanted to just glean what I can. I'm on the board. Both of us are on the worship team, and see what we can. We don't have lots of dollars either to put into equipment and stuff, and we're concerned. I'm concerned anyway. I'm not sure about the rest of everybody, but I'm concerned about privacy concerns with streaming. The Zoom is more, like we have a chat box on the side of the YouTube that goes live, and that's accessible publicly. Other people yesterday were talking about using Facebook Live, but to me, that's got privacy concerns up the wazoo, because they're sharing prayer, and the problem is then that people will suddenly share something and not realize, what kind of compromise that gives them. And so I'm worried about that piece when we're streaming and trying to put Zoom stuff up on the screen, and how do we protect those who need privacy protection and all that.
Yeah, and that's a good concern, and I think a lot of churches have sort of struggled with it, but also come up with some solutions in terms of policies and communicating those policies, right? So as long as people know what's going to happen and can opt in and opt out, I think you're relatively safe in terms of security. One of the policies we always had was you never use anyone's last name, right? If you have a prayer request, it's for Pam. You never use Pam's full name, which probably isn't a bad idea, even if you're not streaming. But there are ways of dealing with it. But I think if you're there and you're asking the question, you're going to come up with the policies and the ways of doing it that are going to address that. But I wanted to go back. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted one question while you're talking about that is when you're streaming, is that just available on the internet anywhere while you're streaming, or is there a way of tailoring that to a particular community? I'm sorry, I'm really not well versed in this.
The quick answer is yes. When you stream to YouTube, it's available to everyone around the world, and not only that, it's usually archived, which means that it's there afterwards. Now that's also one of the nice things about it, because one of the other things we worry about is having worship on Sunday morning cuts out a lot of people, and having people to be able to access the service at a different time of the week is something that can be really important for them too. As a matter of fact, we would have here about 250 people live watching at the actual time on Sunday. But by the next Monday, we have 1,000 people who have watched it. So that's part of the outreach. Now, I think there is a privacy setting where you can set something in your setup of your YouTube stream that you might be able to say, make this private. I've never sort of looked at the details of that. The other thing, and this probably isn't terribly helpful for you if you don't have a lot of money, is to look at a different CDN. And the CDN is a content delivery network. Now, YouTube is a free CDN, and Facebook is a free CDN, but there are others where you can pay a fee. And when you pay the fee, you have a lot more control and a lot more ability to say, okay, I just want this to go here, right? And you can put it on your website so that people have to go to your website to access the service. Still available as an archive. It's still available to anyone who wants to join, but they have to know that they're coming to your service. And I'll just get to you in a second, Ryan. The other thing that's sort of cool about the breadth of streaming and having it accessible to others is that you start developing even an international congregation.
Yep.
So one of my favorite stories is getting an email from somebody in Arkansas. And he said that during the Trump days, it got a little crazy down there in church. He was really getting uncomfortable. And so he sort of started to cast around for an online service, and he found our service, and he started watching it. And he said, you know, last August, you had a service on white privilege. We don't get services like that or sermons like that down here. And I thought, you know, probably they don't. And it's sort of interesting to think that your message of white privilege and the education that comes with that and the perspective that comes from that and the gospel application of that is something that now is in Arkansas, you know. And so there's something about, you know, you have a gospel to share. You know, you have a ministry to share, and part of it is to go out into the world and share it. And so I think, you know, as much as privacy is a legitimate concern, I think you want to balance it with the gospel commission, you know, to go out in the world and share the gospel message. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, you started off by talking about how, you know, you have it pre-recorded and then you premiere it on Sunday morning. And I thought, what a wonderful way of looking at it. You know, we're premiering the Sunday worship. And I just love that expression.
Well, it runs live with a live chat on the side.
Yeah.
So it's as live as we can get reliably.
Yeah.
And then we have the Zoom before and after, but it's still like the main service is still accessible, and they can actually see the chat that happened live, and they can still leave comments down below if they watch it at a different time. We actually found out that we have a Bible study group from Ireland who join us most Sundays. They meet together in Ireland and watch our service.
Yeah.
Our minister is particularly, I think, he's adapted to the online medium, and I think he's phenomenal at delivering the service so that you feel like you're sitting in the room with him.
Yeah.
You know, it's a whole different things, you know, compared to streaming. So we're gonna try and keep some of that going. It's just staff and time and
yeah. So the other recommendation I'd make is if you have unstable internet, Rural Connect works off of cellular. And so we have, you can get a cellular hotspot from Bell or Rogers or Shaw for about $200. And then the plan that we have is $60 a month. And that does us, for the most part, that does us for 4 services during the month. And so then you don't have to worry about the instability of your internet or how many people or neighbors are sort of on. And, you know, again, it's not inexpensive, but it's not terribly expensive either. And so if you wanted to try that, you could even try it for a bit and, you know, for $60 for a month, you know, and you might even be able to rent. I think you probably can even rent the box. But, you know, I would try and see if that would work for you and if that's something that would fit within your budget.
So you'd pay for the box?
Yeah, it's just a tiny little box. It's like a modem or a router, similar to what you'd have coming into the church for your internet, but it's purely cellular. So
And you get that from Rural Connect or from TELUS?
You can get it from TELUS. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, and again, you can either get a plan, and I think it's like a phone. You can buy a plan that includes the phone in your monthly payment, or you can buy the phone outright and then have a lower rate for the services and then the plan.
And then the Rural Connect part does what for us?
Well, no, I'm just saying what we do in Rural Connect is we use cellular. So, because we realize that a lot of the rural churches that we're working with are in a similar situation like you, that they may not have any internet, or the internet they have might be really weak and insufficient for streaming. And so we've put in our boxes that we send out to the satellites. We've put in a cellular hotspot so that we don't have to worry about the internet at the church that we're going to.
So does that mean that if you were part of Rural Connect, that you wouldn't need the TELUS part?
If you were part of Rural Connect, it would come in with the box. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Rural Connect for rural congregations, what we do is we send a box. It's fully configured. It's got a video conference unit. It's got a sound system. It's got a data projector. It's got a cellular hotspot, all configured together so that all you do is you plug it in, you turn it on, you put up the data projector against the wall, and you're good to go. And it's the hub that sort of controls everything. But you're a participant in the service because there's also a camera there that will capture the parts of the service that you're doing in your local place. But I'm saying to you that you could just on your own get a cellular hotspot and the plan, and that might do what you need to get some more stability.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Ryan, you had your hand up.
Oh, I think it was a while ago. I was just going to say that we have used YouTube's private function early on in COVID. A couple of funerals where they wanted to allow a select number of people to view the funeral. What I found is that as time has gone on, everybody's got used to watching funerals online, but it did work well. You had to send the people a link in advance, and there was some setup on that side in YouTube, but it was relatively straightforward. So that is an option if you are concerned. But I go with Randy on the more people who you can reach out to, the better. Because we have more people watching than we'd ever had in church on a Sunday, and we too have experienced that change where Tuesday is the day people watch, or Sunday night. I know if it's a beautiful Sunday, they're going to watch tonight. Our number will be lower online live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So what about you, Diane? I know you're not coming from a particular charge, but what's your experience?
So I work for several of Southern Ontario's regional councils, and I'm really pleased that the conversation about hybrid worship is happening because, Randy, you alluded to the fact that some people weren't accessing church pre-pandemic, and I personally am one of those persons because I have immunocompromised children. And so for the past 3 years, church hasn't been a safe place
Mhm.
outside of the pandemic. So I'm so mindful of the ways that church was exclusive before. And I love the ways that technology is bringing us together and making it possible for those who couldn't participate before to participate now. But my concern is that we're just creating a new level of inaccessibility for folks who are more rural and don't have dependable connections, for congregations that are largely frequented by older people who are afraid of the technology, and by congregations that are kind of scraping by financially and can't necessarily implement some of the technology options that they would like to. So I guess my interest is kind of that that bare minimum, and you started to address that when you talked about, you can do this if you have an iPhone. What are the simple and accessible and affordable ways that congregations can start to build up their technology arsenal, so that they can continue to serve those who can't return to in-person worship?
Yeah. And again, I mean, when you start talking about iPhones or Android phones, you are talking about something that probably is in the congregation already, right? So, as long as someone's willing to use their phone for the Sunday service, you're probably already set. I know there's a church in Bowmanville, and they started during the pandemic. They got a GoPro camera, which is $300, $400, maybe even less if you get an earlier version. And they did a connection into their computer and did OBS, and they streamed it out. And they found out, as they started looking at the numbers, was that they had Easter and Christmas numbers on a regular Sunday morning. And they sort of stopped and said, just a sec, this is something we need to be paying attention to, right? There's something going on here, and it's really important. And so they decided to go all in, and they had some monies to be able to do it, and they went with a relatively high-end system. But you don't have to. They started with a GoPro, and they were getting Christmas and Easter numbers. And so you can start small, and as people begin to value it, sometimes when people value something, the money comes for it. And you'll find that people will be sort of saying, well, can we get a second camera? It'd be really nice if we get this view. And you can add it. There's nothing that says you have to start with a big, expensive setup right off the bat. You don't. But it allows that kind of ability to connect. Now, Irene, you were talking about the people from Ireland that connect with your service. We're also finding that there are people who are wanting to join a congregation who don't live in that area. And what made me think about it was, Marathon, which is sort of 3 hours east of here on Lake Superior. They have a member of their congregation from Ireland. They've joined their church. They're not likely to ever go in the door, but they're a member of that congregation. And so I think we're looking at a lot more interesting and outside of the box kinds of configurations of things. And Diane, I think your neighbor down in at Fairview, they had a really interesting program. They got some money. They bought 10 iPads, I think, configured them up, bought a group plan for them, and then they made them available to people who didn't have technology. And it was as simple as you showed them how to turn it on, how to go to the browser. The browser's all set to go to a particular page, your website, and they were in. And it was very low overhead in terms of knowing technology, and the expense wasn't great. They got a grant to be able to do it, but I remember I asked her, I said, how much is the cellular plan? Like for 10 units. And she said about $2,000 a year. And I know that in my congregation, there was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth about the people that we're leaving behind. Like there are people who don't have internet. What about Frank? What about Glenna? The beloved members of the congregation that don't have a phone, they don't have a iPad or a smart TV or internet connection. They're getting left behind, and they were there every Sunday. Well, this was a simple way of doing it, and I think if I went to that board and said, for $2,000, you can keep them connected, I'm willing to bet the money would be there to do that. So, part of it is looking at the possibilities and how you get people connected. And they still had people say, oh, no, I don't want to touch it, because there is a real fear of technology. And I'm not sure there's a lot we can do other than communicate and provide support. But if someone's saying, I want nothing to do with it, well, then they're not going to have anything to do with it. So you had talked about accessibilities, and then I think there are ways of doing that,
You want me to just jump in a little bit, Randy? And
sure. So yeah, Ryan has an interesting ministry at his church where he uses something that, what it made me think of, Ryan? I don't know if you're old enough for this, but when I was growing up, there were party lines. Does anyone remember a party line?
My grandmother was on a party line.
Yeah. So that, and I know Trinity used to do that. The minister would take the phone off the hook and put it in the pulpit, and he would preach the sermon and do the service, and people would get on their phones and listen. So that's what I thought of when I heard you. What you have is much more sophisticated. So if you wanted to let us.
Sure, I'll fill in this part, and it's evolved over COVID, of course, like everything else. One of my big concerns in the very beginning with looking at Zoom, because a lot of people around us were talking about Zoom, was, so our church, Canafton, St. Mark's Canafton, Belleville, Ontario, yeah, I'm at the 5 minutes from the 401, but most of the congregation doesn't have good internet, and it was even worse before the pandemic. It's gotten better, but it was worse before. So how do we connect for the people who don't have internet? I think I figured it out, 20% of our board didn't have internet at all. So how do you have a board meeting? How do we do these things? So I looked at all different ones, and one I found is called freeconference.com.
Now I can put up a web page of it.
Yeah. And it's out of the States. You will pay for it in US dollars, but again, it's probably worth it. Through this, what we were able to do, yes, it does all the things Zoom does. Zoom is better in terms of the face-to-face video, but what this let us do was provide a way that people could call in and listen into the worship service. Because we were broadcasting onto YouTube, not on Zoom, because we wanted our worship service to be open rather than having to have a Zoom invite, and I also wanted to avoid Zoom bombing, which was happening a lot, where people would get your invitation to a Zoom service and then dump all kinds of nasty stuff into it. We set on this system. So once you set up an account, there's 3 different kinds of accounts. There's the free account, which means you set up an account, you can do some very basic calling in, as long as the people who are calling are okay to bear the the long distance charge. Now I was just checking, and yeah, their phone number for Alberta is it's an Edmonton number, so it wouldn't be local for either of you. And they have a local Toronto number as well. But a lot of people have long distance plans now because grandkids live far away. So that was more accessible. We also chose, I think we're on the Pro plan, which is $35 a month. It gives us, or are we on a different? Yeah, it gives us 750 minutes of 1-800 access. So people can call us toll free and they can listen into the worship service. They get to hear everything we're doing. Often I've found it gives me an opportunity to talk to those people and check in with them after worship. which has been nice. A couple of the couples, they each get on a different extension, so each of them are listening in. On our end, all I do is turn it on, and we have it turned on one computer near a speaker, and everybody just calls in. So it's very, very straightforward, that part of it. We have an account with both this, and we have a Zoom account because we use Zoom for meetings, but for our board meetings and things. But we've been using this one as a way to keep everybody connected in our sort of group.
So, I'm just trying to work on the costs again. It says the free account has unlimited conference calls on local numbers. So if you were in Edmonton and that's where they have their number, then it would be free for you.
Yeah, or if you're free to Toronto, just to the 647 area code,
right?
It's free to you.
Yeah. But if you're outside of the number, then it's a long distance call. Okay.
Right. But even, again, a lot of people have an all Ontario or an all Alberta calling plan, or they have an all cross Canada plan, right? That's more common now. So like of the 5 households who have used this continuously, so that's about 10 people throughout the pandemic, half have called in on the 1-800 and half have called in because they have a long distance plan. So that has worked out well for them. And the only person who knows who's using each one is someone who looks at the technology. So, in terms of privacy, nobody knows who's the church is paying for and who isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a nice feature.
Yeah. And again, it's, is $34 a month worth it for the extra inclusion?
Yeah.
I
mean, we looked at moving everything to Zoom, and Zoom was just too expensive to add a complete Zoom teleconference line with with a 1-800 number. We do on our Zoom account have one line because we have one person from the board who goes to her daughter's house, but we still have one person who needs to dial in by telephone to board meetings. And so we keep one Zoom line for that person to dial in. So even on Zoom, you can buy a telephone line, $20 a month.
And
and
you talked about Zoom
number.
Sorry?
And you can get a local number. Like our number, our Zoom telephone number is local to Belleville.
Okay.
And we're a small town of 50,000 people in sort of rural Eastern Ontario. So it would be very easy for people to have a Zoom number people could call in, that one person could call into at a time around a major center. But I'm sure there's others that within every calling area, local calling area.
Yeah.
How many minutes did you say you get on the Pro plan?
On the Pro plan, they're getting 750 minutes. So remembering that if 2 people call in, that's counting 2 minutes. If 5 people call in, every minute is 5 minutes, which is the same as the old Bell teleconferencing system. And it may be where you are that like TELUS might have a really good teleconferencing system you could use. I would call their business people because they're all scrambling to offer everybody new options. We just renewed our contract with our service provider. We're with our local cable company who does our internet and our telephone. And they increased we have unlimited data. They unlimited long distance now, that was an improvement for less than we were paying on our previous contract. So everybody's kind of looking out, how can we help churches? Actually, I've been really interested in the number of people who realize that this is an area of business they need to look at, because we will use it. And we have done a whole variety of different things beyond worship. We kept up our pancake supper, it was make your own pancakes. And we used Zoom rooms, and we've done our strawberry social just to keep people together. We tried to keep some of those activities.
So strawberry social, they get delivered or everyone makes their own?
No, it was pick your own strawberries.
Okay.
We talked about a drop on, like drive through. We've done a lot of drive through things here.
Yeah.
We've done drive through vaccine clinics and drive through food pickups and all kinds of stuff. But
Well, you've also done some interesting stuff with outdoor services too, at parking lot services, haven't you?
yeah, we did an outdoor. We've traditionally do some outdoor services throughout the year. So we did. We used the Rural Connect equipment to broadcast into the church, so everybody got to sit outside. Again, COVID safety, that was great. Everybody got to see each other. The wind was a little strong one of the days. But again, we did our usual outdoor service, and it kept that tradition going. And we ended up chatting with the cyclists who were parking in our parking lot, right? Who wouldn't have talked to us if we were in the building.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're looking for ways to do outside stuff and to use our property to be visible. We're lucky we're on a river, right, sort of on a village on the end of town, being surrounded by suburbs, basically. And so transitioning from that rural farming community to a suburban community, because people are leaving the GTA and coming this way is what we're finding, right? It's the people not leaving Toronto itself, but leaving the Toronto suburbs.
Yeah.
Oshawa, they move this far because they can still commute to their job in Oshawa 3 days a week or something. We've seen incredible change. And I suspect you are, on the outskirts of Calgary, you will see people moving out to you as well.
Yeah.
With the river, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it's been, our community is largely from Calgary, on the outskirts part of Calgary, but also the other communities all around, and then the farming communities. But those people also experience a lot of difficulty with their internet being stable.
Yeah.
So we've had trouble, like board meetings that we hold on Zoom. 1 or 2 people, they can have a lot of trouble connecting on a given night. So.
And that's where the telephone option can be helpful, to have a way people can call in. Because some people just can't.
When you mentioned the outdoor service and the river nearby, I just started thinking about baptism.
Oh, so I've got a baptism coming up. 3 brothers. They range in age from 18 to 24. We're going to baptize them in the river behind us. It's going to be exciting.
God.
What we're gonna do with that is we're gonna video it on Saturday and show it on Sunday. That's our decision, because I've never done a river baptism.
Yeah.
But again, what we're using there is, when we started in 2018 putting stuff out on YouTube, we went to a local AV company, I'll call them, and we got a camera that basically directly sent to our YouTube. So the camera was Wi-Fi connected to our internet and went to the YouTube, and that's how we started. Now what we do with the camera is we use it to pre-record. So even things the small things you buy, they become helpful as you change and try new ideas. We're now we're part of Rural Connect, so now in the sanctuary we have 3 cameras and a whole system that we can operate. But the camera has been really helpful for some of these other things. I think last year also we did our Christmas Eve service. That was one of the few we pre-recorded, where we were able to use the camera to go around and take video of the different scenes from a nativity play that we did in all different places, all different people, and put that together. And that's our #1 service in terms of views. In fact, it's had enough views, it's now got commercials before you watch it. So, you're reaching people when you get commercials on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But
unfortunately, they're saying now that they're going to put commercials on all of them.
Oh,
so I'm just waiting for the first Viagra commercial to interrupt a service and see how long
my
that
kids
lasts.
hate that. So I have teens, they hate that. And I think, we're all on YouTube, but we're going to need to start thinking about other ways of reaching, because my kids probably won't watch it on YouTube. So I'm looking at Twitch, and Twitch is the one they watch all the time, people video gaming for hours. But what's the other one? TikTok is the other one they do watch. How do we put stuff out there? Well, it is, and that's a truth, and yet it's not going to go away.
So
Okay.
I was talking to someone a little while back, and they were talking about how they have a purely online ministry.
Yeah.
They don't have any building they're associated with or anything like that. And I thought it was TikTok. It may have been Instagram, but they had just started that. And they said what a challenge it was to reduce your sermon to 3 sentences.
Yeah.
You know, and he said, you know, the reactions you get from that as well. He says it's just unbelievable. You know, so, and what a discipline. You know, I can probably take 5 minutes to say what my 10-minute sermon's about. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. The other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about the outside service, there's someone on our Wednesday chats that works for a company, and he was talking about, you know, the whole drive-in kind of experience. You have a parking lot, people stay in their car and then tune in on the radio to the frequency, right? And he was selling the equipment that allowed you to do that. And so I assumed it was really expensive to do that, but he said the unit to do that is about $200, right? So that's not a really expensive investment. And again, it gives you that safe, people are there and coming to the church and experiencing the worship together in a purely and completely safe way.
That's a really good price because it's a one-time expense.
Yeah, yeah. And all you need is maybe some ushers on rollerblades, you know, to go from car to car with the offering plate or something, you know, with masks.
Like
Anyway.
A&W used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
We did drive-through communion a couple of times. That was really well received. So everybody had to bring their own elements, and we had some there for, you know, that were prepackaged and stuff for if people arrived without them, and you just drove up in your car, and our minister and care team, the woman who looks after that, were there and greeted everybody, and then they were masked, we were masked, and there were the words of institution and all of that for us, and prayers with us and of blessing. And then we drove up a little further, and there were 2 members of our prayer team who prayed for people. And then you could drive off, but it was quite well received. And there was another church, not our church, but friends of ours attend. They had a whole seminar that was sort of hybrid, and I just fascinated the dickens out of me, because they had workshops. And there were some for children, and there were cooking ones, and there were sewing ones, and there were painting ones and stuff like that. And then people would register, and there were kits put together at the church. Like if it was a baking one, all the stuff for the recipe that was going to be made. And then people led them from their homes. But the kits were either picked up or delivered to people's homes. And I just thought it was brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. And they were scheduled over 3 days for different periods of time. And I think they were done like on Zoom or something. But I just thought that was such a great idea.
I think there's so many creative things. I wish somewhere there was like a list being kept of the creative things people have done or heard about. Instead of communion, we did imposition of ashes on Ash Wednesday as a drive-through, because that's always been something we've done here, an Ash Wednesday thing. And that was another way. And I ended up talking, you know, people got to talk to people, right? Again, I'm going to have to go because I have another meeting that's just at 2. But I do want to, before I go, say, particularly for Irene, Ralph, and Ruth, I'm hearing all kinds of creative things you've already done. And I just want to say, like, you really are doing creative new things.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. So don't always feel like you're the last ones or you don't have it. You're doing wonderful things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's sort of been the interesting experience that we're having. See you, Ryan. I know you got to go.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
That there has been so much creative stuff happening in this past year, and adapting to things, and hopefully it's going to make us a more adaptive congregation. That we're, maybe we've been stuck in things, we've been stuck in our silos for so long. Maybe this will be the experience that pushes us out of that a bit, and makes us start to do things differently, and find out that we can. And that maybe we even enjoy some of it. I know I'm going to end on my mantra, which is when we start looking at going ahead, a lot of people say, well, how are we going to do Zoom and the regular service and all these new things that we've come up with and all the old things we're going to be doing? Like, how can we do it all? We don't have the capacity to do it all. And this is where I think one of the things we've learned is that we don't have to be in the same spot to do things, which means that we have the ability to collaborate in ways that we've never had before. And so my mantra is, when you ask the question, how can we do all this? You change it to, who can I do this with? And we start looking for partners in what we want to do. So even something like a Bible study, an online Bible study, if you were to partner with another church, down the street or in the next town, and you got the minister there and the minister at your church doing this together, maybe alternating weeks when they lead or taking 1 month and another month, all of a sudden for that minister, it's half the work.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you start doing stuff together, you start having the work involved in that, and it allows for the extra elements that you're doing. So, that's something to consider as well. Who can we do this with outside? Because now we can connect on Zoom or in, excuse me, in other ways. And it's worth keeping in mind. So when you get really stressed out and you think, we don't have capacity for this, maybe you do. Maybe there's resources in the next congregation that you can pool with and find what you need. So I wanted to ask as our last question is, was there any unanswered question that you came and you wanted to ask or have an answer to before we leave?
I just wanted to mention about what I put. The ukulele church. It is, I don't know, it was intergenerational, and it was. We saw a little clip yesterday at the first session we were at, and I just our kids were all had a lot of trouble attending church in person. It wasn't that they were immune compromised, but special needs. And so traditional church was hard. And I saw that, we thought, wow, wish that was around when we were.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've been combining 5 churches for our online service in Thunder Bay. And that means that we've got the resources of 5 different music programs at our disposal. So we had an Easter service where we had 60 members of the choir. Most of the churches involved would have 20 at most, right? And we have a dulcimer choir, and we have a handbell choir, and we have a string quartet that plays from one of the churches. And so all of a sudden we put all those resources together, and it's the best music program we've had ever in this past year. Right. And so, and to the point where some of the congregations are saying, do we really want to go back to just being on our own? But it was interesting when you mentioned the ukuleles. I was at a service about a month ago, and part of it was live and part of it was taped. And we got to the postlude, which had been taped. And it started out in a backyard with this something on the ground and this woman beside it, and a piano started playing, and she got on the board and she started to tap dance. And you're sort of looking at it and saying, what's going on here? And it was just delightful. It was just, you couldn't believe what you were seeing. You never would have expected it. So there's that sense of surprise and awe that worship should bring. And I left with a big smile on my face, just thinking, what a wonderful way to end. But I was talking to the minister of one of the churches, and she said that she heard from a number of people in her congregation how horrified they were about that poster.
Makes me so sad.
It just destroyed the service because it was so unworshipful. And so it's one of those things where we have all sorts of opportunities ahead of us, and we've got to be able to embrace them and embrace the change. So I think you guys are doing that already. And I hope some of the ideas will sort of further things along. And I hope, if you can, to keep in touch with me and let me know what you do. Because as Ryan said, we're trying to sort of get a sense of, what's working and what's happening for different people, and what are their experiences. Because when we hear about the ukulele service, or we hear about a tap dance postlude, it just opens up that sense of awe at the creativity that's available to us in the church, and that's exposed now. So I'd love to hear about it. So if you have a chance, drop me an email and let me know what's going on.
Can you give us your email address?
Yeah, did I not put it in? Or maybe I didn't hit the enter. There it is.
Maybe
for
we
some
can
reason,
figure out how to do an online flash mob.
Yeah. Problem with Zoom particularly is that it doesn't do music well.
I know I was teaching, my last year of teaching was just when COVID started, and all of a sudden I had to teach online. I thought I was going to end my career cruising on old lesson plans.
Yeah.
But one young teacher came in, and I was telling him, I don't know what to do. And he gave me this page of all the resources. This resource page, just a list of things I could try. And I had a little grade 5 science unit on weather, and there was a meteorologist in Connecticut with all these incredible plans, and it just opened up a world. I don't know, just when Ryan mentioned about making a list of things like ukulele church, or strawberry bake sale or whatever. I don't know. It's just it would be so neat getting some kind of list like that.
The list I'm working on now, and again, if you ever have something you want to contribute to that, I'd really appreciate it, is best practices for hybrid worship. Like that's the big question right now. And people are coming up with all sorts of really good ideas, but it'd be nice to sort of have a place where you could check out what other people are doing.
Oh, that would be awesome.
So if you do something, let me know. Does
Andrea's new book address any of that?
I haven't got to that part. I think there's an element of different uses of technology, but I don't think the hybrid part is part of that yet, because it was the book was already sort of, I think, in the oven, in publication mode when we all started asking, okay, what are we going to do in September? But it's a good book, well worth reading.
Yeah, it's by Andrea Irwin.
Andrea Irwin, Andria Irwin, and it's called Following, and you can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, it's just out now.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for the good of the cause? Well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate everyone's input, and I hope you found it useful.
Oh, sure did. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Hey,
Randy.
guys, take care.
Great to see you again, Ruth.
You too, Irene.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.